So good morning, everyone. My name is Michael Curran from the Ottawa Business Journal, one of the organizers of today's event. And I want to echo some of Su Ling's comments. First of all, I really do want to sincerely thank everyone for their time today. We know that we're all torn and pulled in a million different directions these days on Zoom calls and face-to-face meetings, but it's so important, I think, that we gather such a diverse group of people in the room. We faced issues nationally that's playing out in our federal election. We face issues locally. The issues these days, I find, are very complex, and for that reason, we need a bunch of diverse people in the room working on these issues. So for me, if we go back to one of the purposes of the City Building Summit, it was to kind of create, I'll use the term, big tent event, where we bring multiple types of people into the room to try to figure out some of the challenges and opportunities that are before us here in Ottawa. As someone in the media, I'm contributing to the bombarding of messages. And when I think about one of the things we need to do a little bit better in the media is provide context for what's happening. And I think that, again, is part of what we're doing here today. So we're not talking about, individual news releases or developments or financings. We're talking about the downtown, our rivers and parks, music, energy and transition, development, universities and post-secondary session I'll moderate this afternoon. And really, it's about giving you the big picture and then asking each of you to take action. So let's get you informed, let's get the discussions going. We loved the questions, but it's equally about going back to your particular community's areas of interest and taking action after this. So in addition to the summit, OBJ wants to, of course, contribute to that context, that big local picture that we're creating. And that's why at the end of today's event, during our cocktail session, we'll launch a new magazine, the second ever City Building magazine. And in this second issue, we take a look at 6 neighborhoods, the city building projects that are happening in those neighborhoods that are underway or in the pipeline. So we're excited to launch that magazine later today, sometime around 4 o'clock. These events are always very meticulously planned. Su Ling had a somewhat organic idea here today when we were just sitting back before we started and reflecting on the incredible people in the room. And Su Ling said, look, this room is full of city builders and we should shout out to a few city builders. So I want to do that right now. It's a little bit impromptu and there's a connection to the man on my right here. I want to give a shout out to Shirley Westeinda. Where's Shirley? Please stand up, Shirley. There she is. Where I was commenting, she's wearing her Easter colors today. And Shirley, forgive me, this isn't completely scripted, but stay standing here for a second. I know several of the key bio facts on Shirley. Of course, she was involved in the Westeinda group of companies, along with her husband and family. They continued it. Shirley was one of the first female leaders of something called OCEDCO. Probably no one remembers OCEDCO, Shirley. It's a predecessor to OCRE. Shirley was also the first female founder, to lead the Canadian Construction Association. So when I think of Shirley, she's had a massive community impact. She's been really breaking through that glass ceiling. And of course, I don't want to forget about a lot of the community work that you did, including Algonquin College being the chair. So let's give her a big round of applause for another city builder in the room. We got a fan here, I think. Okay, it's time for our second session, which is talking about empowering developers, building cities of tomorrow. This is off script again, but when I was just thinking of the word developers, often in that city, in our city and in the media, quite frankly, there's a little bit of a negative connotation around development. I think one of the fascinating things you'll find in this session is you're going to find some people that are thinking very broadly, We've got a developer, we've got someone from the construction sector, and we've got a brilliant architect up here. So I think we're going to try to shift. I think people in this room are pretty positive on developers, but that's going to be one of the outcomes I'm going to predict. Around the world, leading cities are proving that sustainable development and economic growth can go hand in hand. So how can Ottawa rise to this challenge? This next session dives into the cutting-edge strategies for balancing economic, social, and environmental priorities in city building. Discover real-world success stories from global leaders and explore innovative approaches to zero-carbon affordable housing, a reality. From bold policies to breakthrough projects, this conversation challenges conventional thinking and sparks ideas for shaping a resilient, inclusive, and future-ready Ottawa. Please welcome to the stage today's moderator, Jennifer Cross, Business Development Manager at Morant Construction. Joining her, Jonathan Westeinda, recognize the name, surely, Jonathan, son of, founder and CEO of Windmill Development Group. It's doing remarkable work in the city. And again, finally, Andrew Reeves, one of the leading thinkers around architecture and the future of our city. Andrew, of course, is the founder and principal partner for Linebox. Please welcome them now. Here they are.
It's a bit of a big topic that they've outlined for us, and I'm really hoping that we're not that dud panel that follows Mary Rowe. So we will do our very best. As we navigate through this pivotal moment in history, the conversation is shifting towards radical collaboration across every sector. Suddenly, issues like interprovincial tariffs, permits, procurement, innovation and infrastructure are front and center. Who knew those were going to be such topics that everyone cared about? Now we're waking up to that reality that the traditional silos and competition that have defined much of the work we do need to be dismantled in favor of unity. To build a stronger, more cohesive city and country, we've got to figure out how to come together, sharing ideas, resources, and solutions. So here we're going to break that down. We're going to start right now by talking about how Canadian cities are innovating and leading the way forward for everyone. So in our panel prep, we were chatting about how many people are referring to Edmonton and Calgary and some of the progressive things that they're doing, and how we don't actually need to reinvent the wheel. We just need to collaborate. We need to talk to one another, and we need to talk about what's exciting across the country and how we can bring that here. So that's how we're going to start. I'm going to start with you, Andrew. Tell us what you think is exciting across the country.
Thank you. First, I think the mic is working, I hope. Yeah, all good. First check. I think it's my description of that is just staying curious, and everybody in this room, they do what they do, and I think being curious in the world and seeing the world, and Jonathan's going to speak to some of his experiences. So I've went to Calgary to see what they're doing with adaptive reuse, went to Edmonton to see what they're doing with their procurement process, go to Vancouver to see what they're doing with environmental movements and CLT and all those kind of good things. And then you travel the world, and I know I heard some things about our transit system, and I was lucky enough to go to the Smart City Conference in Germany, and we went to Hamburg, and everybody in this room should go there to see that development. It's quite large, but how they handled that project was pretty amazing. And one of the moments I had in that little journey walking around is that I would say it's about 3/4 built, and we ended up in their subway station with a developer, and it was fully operational, and cars are whipping by, and there's not a person on any of the cars and inside the station. And luckily one of the Americans asked, well, I guess no one takes the subway here. And only a German will look at you in very, very odd look and say, well, no, you build the system first, and then you build above. So this is how we go about making and building. We need to think about these things and not build at Canada North and then figure out how to get there after. So as you see things in the world and you go to the different cities, and Jonathan's traveled there and back, I know he wants to speak to that. So I think it might be a good way to tell some stories to get it going.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there are lots of good things going on in other cities, and it's great that we do learn from other cities and best practices instead of trying to always invent our own. But I also think it's important that we level set a bit in the context of the challenges we're facing are not Ottawa unique. We have some country problems, and if you want to thank some positive spin on recent events, like thank you, Trump, for getting us all Canadian proud and inward looking.
Yes.
But, you know, right now, if you look at the stats, it's kind of, so Canada is the, it takes, it's the 34th out of 35 OECD countries to get an approval for some sort of development. The only country that it takes longer is Slovakia. It's a little crazy, right? We are the 28th of OECD and as far as productivity increase. And you stack those things up, which is time and conflict and energy, all going, and no surprise, we are have the highest housing prices of the G7, and they all correlate to each other. And so there is an element of yes, we want to learn what's going on in other Canadian cities, but is that the best and only fertile ground to go to when we are so behind what's happening in the rest of the world to progress and make that happen? And you know, to the idea of developers having a bad rap a little bit. You know, a good analogy someone shared with me the other day was good in the sense that I do believe that developers are generally you know, groups of good, wanting to create community benefit, wanting to create community places, because they're all places that people need to live and work, and they got to be fantastic. And so you drive, you know, so it's kind of like the analogy of, you know, you wake up in the morning at 5 a.m. and you're going to crush a workout, you know, one of your best workouts you can imagine. And you've just tried some new, you know, carbon fiber insoles, and you got this heart monitor supposed to improve your efficiency by like 10%. So you get up, you get going, and you get stopped. Your gym bag needs a permit. Oh, okay, all right, fine. Oh, and then because your carbon insoles you bought in Alberta, they're not safety here in Ontario. So we're gonna have to do a check on those things. We're really sorry. Oh, and then your sweat towel. We're going to have to get like interjurisdictional, you know, study on that to just make sure it meets the community, you know, benefits requirements. And so I'll need a few third-party consultants. And so you're like you're kind of like, all right. And then finally, then you get to the door of the gym, and the gym's saying, oh, we're really sorry, but we've had to increase your fees by 25%. And we're really sorry, but the treadmill's not working because we haven't been able to maintain it. But have a great workout. And you know, at that point, you're just like, oh, okay. And that's what it kind of feels like. You get up every day really wanting to do positive things, but you just, you know, again, it's a national issue. It's levels of government, you know, all layering on top of each other and not collaborating necessarily in the most efficient way. They just sort of create all these problems that mean that when you do get to the end, it's just like, let's just get the basic damn thing done we can to just say we got something done.
So we were supposed to talk about exciting things that are happening, Jonathan.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
So to circle back to exciting things that are happening either in Canada or globally, because you do have a loop of things. You guys can't see it, but you did create a PowerPoint of some great projects that are looping through. Yeah, you can't see it, so that's not helpful. But maybe you could speak about globally some of the things that you're seeing that you want to bring here.
Well, I mean, I'll tell some stories. I mean, at macro level and champions, I know that's a word that everyone's using. My inspiration over my career of late is just that. It's being inspired by people that taste risks and do things that, and see things that maybe others don't. And it literally starts off our first project, which was a crack house converted to a mini house. And it was, you know, maybe not facts, but it was maybe Toronto's first 500 square foot house. And then that street transformed over the years, and all the architects have added their little bits on this 10-foot wide piece of property. So you see how communities change by community leaders, and that doesn't mean the uber rich and well connected. It's how people have done it. Restaurants where no one, you know, on Spark Street, where no one said no one would go or should go, an old bank, and now with Riviera, and it's been 12 years, and one of the most successful restaurants in the city. In Montreal, we were asked by Allied to look at a building that's a wire factory, because no one wanted it and no one could see what they could do. We were lucky to have a tech client that saw the opportunity, and we renovated that and converted that, now grossing more lease per square foot than any office space in Montreal. So design doesn't necessarily have to be a giveaway. Design is an investment, and things can happen from there. And fast forward to Ottawa, we're heavy in conversions, and CLV has championed that sector for our city. We did Albert originally prior to COVID. The city at that point did not recognize conversions as a conversion. They saw them as new build. To Jonathan's points of the frustration and the grind, we had to go through process and development charges and all those kind of things to make that happen. But as an architect, what I get inspired by is all these different people that champion and lead and go down dark places that maybe everyone says you don't go or shouldn't go, but they come out the other side. And Jonathan's the prime example in our city of doing that, of what he did with Citie. Is I'm sure he was told 1,000 times, this is not a good idea, this is a horrible thing, there's so many different collectives and so many different groups, but that is what I think gets us up at night, or stays up at night and gets us up in the morning, is to have opportunity to tackle these things that are very difficult, but through this friction, innovation is born, and that's the exciting part.
One of the things you said, Jonathan, yesterday when we were chatting was spoken priorities versus action priorities. Governments play a pivotal role in urban development, but they also can get in the way of their own agenda. So while Ottawa has articulated a vision for the city building, often the policy works don't support the priorities they say they champion. So what do you believe are municipal, provincial, and federal governments, which we have many in the room, right? We've been talking about how we need to have the right people at the table and the right people hearing in the room the policies that need to change by the boots on the ground people that are actually doing the work. So what do you think we need to start talking about?
Well, I think, A is a recognition of all levels of government play an important role, but the rubber hits the road of municipality. And so there's a certain degree of in somewhat helping, supporting, but getting out of the way so the municipality can drive, at a local level. And I think, some great things are happening in the city. So we have this, the housing innovation panel that's coming that's looking to help streamline and bring more innovation, which is fantastic and is driving in the right direction. But there's a recognition that, again, to my previous point, the municipality only has so much authority. It's still got layers of provincial and federal, overhang, and especially in this city with the oversight of NCC and other things, to really be the master of its own domain, its own direction in creating these policies. So I would say, and it's been sort of interesting over the last few years where there's been, headlines across the board, housing crisis, and no level of government is not saying we're not driving for that, but it's almost felt like a friction between the governments. It's almost sort of like, okay, well, the federal government's going to do this and you're not going to get it unless you do that, city, and the province is, you got to speed it up or you're going to, lose fees. And all these things I can say on the ground have actually just largely created a slowdown, not a speed up, because it's not been collaborative. And so as much as we have our housing innovation panel at a municipal level, there really needs to be more housing innovation panels with all levels of government sitting there saying, okay, collectively we're causing this problem. It's not one level, and how can we, collaboratively break down these barriers as opposed to, each level coming up with its own approach and its own way of doing things. And I can say that in my career, I would stand out 3 projects that have really been surprising and really rewarding. And the one common denominator of all of them is they required a collapsing of all levels of government to sort of sit in a room together as one group, to sort of make decisions as part of 3 different processes. So Dockside Green, which is our first project in Victoria, was, is the first LEED Platinum mixed-use community in Canada, the first district energy system in Canada. It was a contaminated site, but that was one where the City of Victoria, the province of BC, and to a certain degree of federal things were all sort of looking at this in a priority demonstration. And when we wanted to get some things done, it was one sort of group and not 3 different groups that we had to talk to. The second one I would say that was very complicated, but at the same time an unprecedented collaboration and cooperation, as far as I'm concerned, with Citie in Ottawa, and getting that through the approvals here. The one thing that I always look back to sort of what allowed that to move, because that site, when we were looking at it, it's got all the hair you can imagine on it, and one of the most complicated sites you could probably find, and it's in half in Gatineau, half in Ottawa, the NCC overseeing it, 3 different planning processes, blah, blah, blah. But it was a willingness for the City of Gatineau, City of Ottawa, and the NCC to say, okay, we're going to create one advisory panel. We don't need to have you go to 3 different groups, and we're going to create one advisory panel, and what is agreed in that panel will be what we all bring back for our approvals and go through the process. And that created a very healthy friction, but a great outcome, and actually one of the most expeditious, approvals that we've been involved with. And then the third would be a project we're working on in Toronto right now with the City of Toronto. It's the largest affordable co-op housing project in Canada, and it is also sort of one that's sort of seen as priority all the way down, where we're getting unprecedented levels of cooperation from city, province, federal, and it just proves like where things aren't going fast has a lot to do with lack of collaboration. Where things are moving fast in my career and my experience has been where there's a high degree of collaboration and everyone's shooting for the same outcome.
Do you have anything to add on that?
No, that's perfect. I mean, Ottawa, we love you, right? Like, we're here. My office is, I can see it. And we're all committed. This is our town. We eat here, we play here, we work here. And this room is filled. Obviously, we know the motivation of our city and the people in it that want to make it better. But we need to break some things, and we need to be bold, not just on the style and architecture, but how we go about the business of building. And break some of the things like process and procurement, especially City of Ottawa, NCC, please have a self-awakening of you hire wrong, you make wrong. And for our city on the conceptual side of things, again, I think it is a world-class city that doesn't recognize itself, and that's the opportunity for everybody in this room. We're always caught between this like cool European brother that is Montreal and this super rich older brother that is Toronto, and we're kind of caught in the middle, but that is our opportunity, that is our identity, and I think we need to start there, figuring out what is our intent, and if we don't have intent, then we make a bunch of buildings. With intention, you make something special, and to add to that excitement is we are also Canada's capital. Our city represents Canada and everybody in Canada. Toronto doesn't have that advantage, Montreal doesn't have that advantage, we have that, and that's something we need to seriously exploit. And build upon and be bashful at times, but then be bold at times. So then when people visit us, they're not just visiting the city, they're visiting Canada and everybody that's involved in it. So these are theoretical challenges and conceptual challenges that are why we're all here and why these things sell out and why our community involvements are so strong and why all these different boards and OBOT and OBJ and all these people are so committed and passionate and volunteering their time to make the city great. I think that's the inner part of the heart part, is that we know it's there and we can do it. And we're at this, I'm sure people have been in the city for a long time, said there was multiple cross points where we could have won different directions, but I do believe Ottawa is at this juncture where we can do something amazing, and we just need the energy and the people, but we do have to be serious about this.
Yeah, one of the things that you had said when we were prepping is, Ottawa, who are we? And it's a question that comes up over and over again. We've looked at it from a branding perspective, we've looked at it from an architectural perspective, but to Jonathan's point, right, it's about collaboration and coming together. So like being our deep history of being a government town, how do we shift that mindset approach to city building, right? Because we are sort of mirrored in that layer of bureaucracy of being a downtown government town. How do we shift that to where we are now in urban development, how we live and work here in the capital? How do we shift that mindset of the sidewalks roll up at 5 o'clock? I mean, that's another panel, but the nightlife mayor. But how do you think we're going to approach Ottawa 2.0?
Well, I think, first of all, just stepping back, because you can say you sort of live here and there's always frustrations and disgruntlement and things aren't moving fast enough. But it was dawning on me the other day. I was driving down Scott Street, heading downtown towards LeBreton Flats, and you're looking at the skyline and you got the library going up and a bunch of towers and light bulbs, and you're sort of going, if someone showed me that picture 10 years ago, I'd be thinking, yeah, we got some things happening. So everything, things are moving. It goes at glacial speed, longer than you'd like, but things are happening. We are doing some great things in this capital, which are will take time, but are investments that will create amazing outcomes. And so it is. But it is, I think the reality that we are, as much as we are the capital. I was talking to Katie Paris, for example, from NCC recently relative to election coming up and other things like that. And, it is something that does create a political influence on importance of our capital or not, depending on who's in, what party is. And so it's always a struggle to create a consistency in the sense of here's our vision, here's where we're going. And again, the city can do so much. Our downtown, we know, is very reliant on the federal government in many ways, and that having a consistency, and it really is, it's easier, but it is this idea of really needing to look at these as infrastructure projects that somehow can they be depoliticized and have visions that you can drive and keep going and collaborate, and where you do see jurisdictions that one of the questions earlier was places for inspiration. I always find Northern Europe amazing. It's got similar climate, I think, but there is more alignment, it seems, on some of that placemaking investment and longer term infrastructure investments and those sorts of things that you can't help but go over there and be kind of wowed, right? And so it is a question of, is there an ability to sort of create more stability to the equation with all the parties, and then a vision that we're all driving towards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would say, it's like anything like sports or anything in life, momentum matters. And you gotta celebrate momentum. So as the library goes up, instead of being a critic of it, supporting it, and all these things, as a city gets momentum and people build around it, things tend to move. And you can move these big objects into the right places, but you need to have that commission or that passion for momentum and celebration as a city that we can all do this together. And then I'll dovetail that to the Sens coming downtown. And if we are a city of builders and makers in this room, that has to happen. It's not about hockey. It has nothing to do with hockey. This is called momentum. If you build this arena, other things build around it, and our culture builds. Spark Street happens, the event happens. Things go, and then you keep that momentum going. And instead of sitting back and saying, no public funding, no whatever, and so roadblocks, how about yes, and then prove that that's an investment, not a cost, and then the city gets better, and financially, and spiritually, and connection, and all this stuff gets better. And it's everything from the person building a little house to building a giant arena. All these things need to be celebrated properly and exposed. And my little trip to Copenhagen, I was lucky enough, I had an exchange student in our house, and he's from Copenhagen. We went to visit, and then his wife is an architect, so I got a cool little tour. And I used this expression in the past, but because it sounds a bit kind of fluffy, but it's very real. Their culture, what they call, I won't even try to translate, but it's just invest in happiness. And invest in happiness is the quality of food, the quality of the spaces, the quality of architecture. All these things impact your life, and they impact your happiness. We are every day in built environment, and we're all humans, and we experience architecture and spaces every day, and they can be very amazing and inspiring, but they also can be very not. You can describe that everybody loves to go for a walk in the forest. No one ever said, I hate walking through a forest. It demotivates me. But people walk through bad buildings and have bad food, and it really does impact you. So investment is a very real thing, and I don't want that to be confused with this fluffiness of spending money. That's not what it is. It's just really, as a culture, investing in ourselves, and who better to invest in than humans,
The role of the city is changing post-pandemic. When you talk about building cities for people and community and connection, when I look at some of the photos that are coming up on the screen, some of the things that you're working on, is that a focus for you, like building for connection and community now in a new way?
Oh, totally. I mean, as an architect, that's why I'm sure I'm speaking for Jonathan too, is that's why you go through the grind every day, because you grind through these things, and your passion lies so that you, at the end of the day, you can walk around and experience these things. Seeing Albert being converted from a brutalist building that only architects love, which are not exactly stylized, that are beautiful buildings, but we took that opportunity and create homes inside of it. And then when you walk by after Blues Fest, walking by and see people living in there, and that's such a powerful moment when you see, have dinner at a restaurant that you designed, or you're part of the community that those things is what keeps the energy going, and why I keep doing what I do is to see it physically, and I know the power that it has, and it is a very serious business that we're in, and it's a very frustrating business that we're in, and there's a lot of things that are going to break, but at the end, when you walk by these buildings and these places, and that's why we make,
Yeah, and I mean, my office lives in what is the old Shopify space that
Good space.
Mike designed, and you know, in the like he's one of the best out there as it relates to designing and creating cool collaborative spaces and sort of activity hubs, and he's working with us on one of our current projects, and I think, you know, it is something that you definitely always have to think about more than just that building, because if it's just the building, you know, that's not going to really be the selling feature to sort of get someone to live there, right, or work there. And it is very much about what's out at the front, what's in there as far as creating community, and what's at the front door, and what makes you want to ideally, you know, again, be able to walk and be active and support local business in your area and all these sorts of things. And that really becomes more about the placemaking and the activity hubs that you're creating, and is essential, you know, to I think, successful development.
Okay. My dad always said that everyone's for progress. It's change they don't like. So how do we get this room of people who are change makers to carry that message through the city? How do we move from task force and surveys to leadership and action? What do you think is the biggest thing we can do right now, speaking to this room of leaders?
Well, you know, I think, again, to draw out some positives, but, you know, again, we can thank the current U.S. administration for us all, I think, having a much greater sense of pride and a desire to really make our country, I mean, it's exposed us to look inwards, look at our warts, look at our challenges, and sort of say, okay, like, we can't keep being lazy and dependent, we got to fix this. And so that's sort of on a broad basis, I think, that does really create a new activity, a new access. I do think opportunities for unprecedented levels of collaboration to, yes, turn nice chatter and data into action, you know, because we're kind of being forced to do that, and that's not a bad thing, maybe, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I've had my experience, and people that are not comfortable with change, for sure. I mean, one fun little story is when we were doing St. Charles, here we are, we have this church, Catholic church is for sale, developer buys it, and we have to, you know, build around it, and theoretically we say churches were all these gathering places, which is so amazing that people come together. But now we're doing it a different way. But in the process of site plan control, we had the public consultation, and a woman came up to me with a Bible and hit me in the side of the shoulder and said, "How do you feel being a part of killing the Catholic faith?" And I was like, well, that's something I didn't know was going to happen. But these are things that happen, right? So if you're in this, you know, if you're in this world of change, you're not going to have everybody loving it and be comfortable with it. And I'd like to think after, when it's all done and everybody gets excited, when it's all physically there, they realize, oh, these are places for people to live. These are places for people to gather again. And so anxiety is always high, and we have to appreciate that that is truth, and that's okay. But we have to keep fighting to the end and get through all those grinds and all the hates and the not like. They usually have a more powerful voice than the people who like. But it's part of the process of what it is to make, and it's not going to be easy in any way. But again, it's at the end of the day when you see it built and you're a part of changing communities and seeing how people interact with things that you make, it's why you do it.
Jonathan, what keeps you going to the gym and going through the grind? And
With the carbon fiber.
Like when we're up against the challenges that you've outlined, how do you keep going? How do you keep pushing forward to make a difference and an impact like you are doing?
Do I have to answer that? No.
Yes.
No, I would say again, there's no perfect process. There's no perfect you know, work environment you're getting to. So there's an acceptance that like everything is a challenge, and challenge can create opportunities. And I would say that, you know, the other thing maybe just to touch before I get there is there's always this view too of, oh, Ottawa is so bad compared to, you know, Calgary or Toronto. I mean, we've worked cross country in different jurisdictions, and trust me, every city in this country has its challenges. But what does, I guess, keep me going is you know, as I say, I highlighted 3. There's others, you know, there's some projects you sort of never want to look back on again, but there are those projects you do where it did, you know, create those great outcomes and that great degree of collaboration And those are the things you're sort of always starting with, hoping that's what this next project will look like, and doesn't, you know, always get there. And you keep reflecting on your wins at what went right, and how can you replicate that, and how can you, you know, continue to swim upstream if you want, and trying to get to where you're going. But it is definitely a profession that is only for optimists.
We are going to open it up to questions because we have these guys here, have a lot of knowledge on what's going on in the city. So if you would like to ask questions while they're here, please come to the microphone. Can you introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Lisa Della Rosa. I'm with Podium Planning and Design. Okay, there we go. So again, I'm Lisa Della Rosa, and I'm an associate planner with Podium Planning and Design. So deal a lot on the process part of development. And I'm interested in your thoughts on how much of the obstacles and the delay is on the process and less on the concern of what's actually going to be built at the end of the day.
The former. You know, it is, you know, I could go through a litany of stories of what things are getting hung up on that have nothing to do with what the outcome is, but it's, you know, again, a little sidewinder thing here that needs approval from over here and nothing could move forward, or, you know, getting hung up over the maintenance of a path that's stalling 600 units that has nothing to do with that path down. You know, like, again, this is sort of, again, the logic of, okay, are we looking at the big picture here, you know, as far as what we're trying to do versus getting caught in the weeds, and there is a lot of getting caught in the weeds.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's to that point too. It's like, for the feds and our policymakers, that we got to start tackling the hard bits, not the easy bits. And I'm definitely frustrated with both people running for prime minister and their plans. The housing pre-designed houses solution. I don't know who you consult with and why, and how you came out with that conclusion of taking the easiest part of the whole process and tackle that. So for a developer doing mass housing, which we all need, it's like a 2-year process, site plan control, environmental studies, all these things, and holding land and all the costs. The housing part is something they've already had and they already have. So you've chosen to take the easy part and make that part of your campaign. I think the government, if they really want to be serious about business, you got to be serious about what parts of the process that you can fix. And you can fix any of these parts, but fix the hard parts and allow the private sector to do what they're very good at, and the balance.
And one quick thing I'll add to that too is I do think there should be a universal developer 101 course that anyone in politics or in council should take, because there is this perception of, mass rewards and all these other things, and I think it's important everyone, and that's why when there has been instances of success and collaboration, it's also everyone understanding economics of what's happening. But I do think there's a big skew there that sometimes sends things in the wrong directions also.
Can you introduce yourself?
Yes, my name's Matt Steyer. I'm a development consultant. So the previous panel was talking about downtown revitalization with housing as a key focus. What barriers are there for the development community to invest in housing in downtown Ottawa? And what incentives or successes have there been to encourage housing in downtown Ottawa?
Well, yeah, we need some more hours, but we haven't touched much on mid-rise, and I think definitely coming from Copenhagen and Germany, our city needs the most green, most affordable. It always ends up being dense. We need density. We need more mid-rise. We need mid-rise everywhere, not just in little pockets. We got to eliminate this stupid little angular plane thing that we have in this city, so that you end up with a building that steps back like a wedding cake. We have a lot of things we got to break up the rain density downtown. And with conversions, because we are heavily in the middle of it, we also have that as duality, because our industry moves so slow. So as we convert these buildings from office to residential, we're also creating a different condition downtown. So we're now bringing more people downtown, which means needing more schools, more grocery stores, more daycares. So we're changing cities, which is super exciting, and a way it should have been. COVID didn't cause this problem. COVID exposed that our ratio of residential to office downtown was always wrong. So we have an opportunity to fix it, and we are fixing it, which is exciting. Multiple cities are doing this. But as we fix things, we got to make sure we don't break other things. And to Jonathan's point, is like our industry takes a while, so we can't just like react and pivot and start reacting to these things. So we need to, on planning levels and city levels, understand as we shift, the counter shift of what the human needs are. But downtown, definitely mid-rise development, walkable things, and conversions are really helping our downtown, but we're so far away from density. But.
Yeah, well, one comment, it is funny, people often go, like, they'll use Helsinki or Mexico City or whatever, and they're like, that's great density, and that's how, how do we do that back here? And you walk around, you're like, yeah, there's no setbacks. Like, who came up with the idea of these step backs, right? Because it does, and they also have, single stair access, all other things, and great efficient housing there. So there's some stuff, again, we can learn internationally. But, I think, as a city, we're a little schizophrenic, right? Because we are one of the largest geographic cities in Canada, if not, and so there's sort of a constant tension between suburban and urban and priorities and other things that make it a challenge, first of all, to just say, let's prioritize downtown and put some investment. But secondly, you've got to make it a place someone wants to live. Like, do you want to live downtown right now? And what you can access and where you can go? And yes, in certain areas, probably, but it is about as much driving residential as it is driving things like arena, other stuff that just create, activity and reasons why you want to, and you feel comfortable. You can get everywhere without needing a car, because in a lot of places downtown still need a car to get to what you need in the first place, right? But in the past, we have done things like waive development charges to get more housing downtown up to, I think, about 2011, which served its purpose and did quite well. I think we are in a bit of a crisis right now in the sense of downtown, and we should be unleashing every opportunity incentive possible. The existing building conversions are great, but there's maybe 5 to 10% of the buildings that could naturally fit that, and we still got the bulk of the problem we've got to sort of work through. But there are innovative approaches to that we should be open to and we should be driving. But then on the mid-rise side, I think the more you can make an easy button for a certain prototype of housing that can move fast and accelerate and create that, which you are seeing again in different jurisdictions, other things happening, all drive to hopefully success in getting a vibrant downtown.
Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah. I'm Jules Ruby. I've worked in land development for about 8 years now, and just thank you for the work that you guys do in the city. Like, your project and your buildings are incredibly beautiful. I guess I have a question about how incentives can play into good design. I think we know that it's very expensive to develop land because the timelines are so long and the risks are so high. And so, like you said, oftentimes you get to the end and you're like, oh my God, just build it. We need to get there. And I look kind of at cities like Vancouver, which I'm from originally, and they do incredibly colorful, beautiful design, even in townhouse developments, in suburbs. And so I feel like oftentimes I look at our suburban development and it's very gray and brown and black. And there is kind of a lack of kind of design and color, and I do feel like that comes down to our really long timelines, and I'm wondering kind of where incentives from the city could play into that.
Color.
Yeah, I know.
Color.
Andrew loves color.
I have always found it ironic that, how can we travel all these beautiful places on oceans and hot and gorgeous, and then they're all color everywhere. And then we come to a place that is mainly cold and rainy and cloudy, then we lack of color. It's just it's just a bizarre thing for me. You think it'd be the opposite way around, that we need to have some vibrancy in life. But for the business side of architecture, it's everything, right? So for us as architects, we go through the gauntlet. And to your point, where developers go through the process and labor costs are up, and they'll throw some metal tariffs in there, and you throw all. So at the end of the day, when the value engineering happens, it's very real. And it's not done to make more profits or to be richer and those things. These products cannot continue if these things aren't financially viable. So as architects, it's always a struggle to try to do your best to make sure that it is the most economical, most efficient, and fight the fight when there are things. And when you're dealing with developers, I think we have a healthy relationship over the years. We go lots of lunches and whatever, so we have these dialogues, but we understand that product needs to have some value engineering. But he would understand, I think, is if I dig my heels and say this is something special that has to stay, and there's a value to that on resale or the community, those things. But you can't just always throw that out there, because then you lose the value of what you're fighting for. Obviously we're always fighting for architecture, but the business of architecture is very real. And unfortunately, when a product gets injected with development charges that are too much, the length is too much, and the cost is too much and boring, what sacrifices is the physical building at the end, because it's all that's left, because they've already spent all that money and it's kind of already gone. So you have this object now.
Yeah, and actually, like Vancouver's example has been one of the best jurisdictions that's used the carrot and stick approach in the sense of it's particularly on their sustainability side and other things, and sort of just continually bringing up the both the code and the quality. But I would also say, I mean, it depends on who the judge is and who the lens is in analyzing that, because, you know, here, for example, they're for good purposes, but, you know, let's say you want to develop a building downtown Ottawa that happens to be under the NCC purview as well. You know, you're going through a Citie of Ottawa design review committee that has got its own sort of context. You've got the NCC design review that's got its own context, and then you're coming out, you know, sort of, and your vision was over here. And so, again, it just comes back to a little bit of process and collaboration, and is there a way to just do that. In Vancouver, you know, we can also dispel the fact that you know, you're creating amazing buildings that also have wealth there that's selling at far higher points than they can here, and so there is a reality as well in the sense that we are I'll call it a wealthy population, but a fairly middle class population, and you don't have those sort of extremes. So in Toronto, when you see some of these amazing buildings, or in Vancouver, you know, some of that is also because there's buyers that are prepared to pay a fair bit for that, and that's one of the good things about Ottawa maybe too, is that we don't have those extremes, but it's not an excuse as to why we shouldn't be still driving and creating more creative and colorful architecture.
We'll take one last question, and then we're going to get the hook, I think.
Hello, my name is Helen Tan. I work as HT Realty. So my question is regarding the affordable housing. You all know that the government just recently unveiled the very ambitious housing plan, including the Building Canada home BACH. So what's your view or some idea about solving this issue? And Jonathan, you mentioned that you're involved in the Toronto, the largest co-op project. Is any advice that we can learn from in Ottawa? And for Andre, is that any new building technology like the prefab home that can speed up and solve the house shortage and then make it more affordable? Thank you.
Just a little question there for you.
Yeah, there's a lot there. You know, I would say on the political platforms, it's still a lot of headlines without a lot of detail, so it's kind of hard to know. Biggest concern is for those things that are working right now, like say CMHC and other things that a lot of people are relying on, that they don't get disrupted and stalled for another 6 months and delay. But I mean, the good thing is they're both parties are prioritizing housing and hopefully driving programs that can you know, create a smoother ride and a faster ride. So remains to be seen. As it relates to, you know, yeah, the City of Toronto, that's a good example. They created an entity years ago called Create TO, who were essentially empowered to enable all city-owned lands to create more affordable housing. And you know, the federal government's done that now with the Federal Lands Initiative. The City of Ottawa has talked about it. But this is quite a talented group they've put together and has had a string of successes in sort of, again, a collaborative approach, a full incentivized approach to getting affordable mixed-use communities happening on city-owned land.
Yeah, on the modular side of things, yeah, we've been experimenting with that for quite some time, panelized, modularized with Windmill and other clients, and I think the industry, our industry, is well versed at it. We know what we're talking about, and that's not the problem. And back to government is put your support where it matters. And if they want, my approach is that the government should go heavy in and heavy out. So heavy in, get these factories up and running and subsidize as much as you can and get the hell out. So what they're trying to do is focus on the fun parts, like helping us with modular and panel. We already got it figured out. We already have a lot of people in the industry that know this stuff inside out. We don't need support there. We need support to get these things going. Because we can't start building mass production modular houses without the factories. And guess what? We don't have them. And we did in Windsor, where I'm from. They're all gone. So let's build them back, and let's back to what's happening with the United States. Maybe this is our opportunity to start making things again. But we have to be serious about where the real critical path is. And it's not in coming up with new housing designs. That's not the critical path. It's build these things and get out and let us do what we do. It's kind of,
But one thing else, so we're currently building what will be the tallest mass timber modular rental building in Ontario, in Toronto. It's a 9-story mass, and it's using a modular prefabricated system, which actually Mark Carney announced his housing platform in Vancouver from their factory, and so it is the part of the future, I believe, but it is in the context that this is innovation. This is something that needs to be invested in, and this is something that can't just be seen as, okay, the first thing out of the factory has to work. Currently is sort of the first thing out of the factory have to work, or it's not getting anywhere. And for the first one we're doing, we are able to get the benefit of some financial grants and subsidies, but it does need to be looked at as long-term investments again, where you might have to produce 1,000 homes or more out of these things before you really say, okay, this is really a path to make this work. And our, call it real estate finance environment right now is just not set up for that. Right. And so we need to see more depth of investment somehow through that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. Okay, 1 minute. Run. Only because it's you.
Well, being one of the more senior guys here, I just want to make an observation, and that was during COVID, housing was considered essential, and Ottawa built 11,000 houses. We actually had about 4,000 houses drop into the next year that we couldn't build. So now the City of Ottawa has made a deal with the province saying we're going to build 150,000 houses between 2 years ago and 31. We built 3,000 houses last year. There's talk about shortage of labor. Well, there's an awful lot of labor sitting on the sideline right now because there is no demand. And the biggest issue for demand is affordability. And my comment is that we're hearing from the campaign, there's an awful lot of campaign promises that are suggesting that we may see housing drop as much as $100,000. Now that is significant, whether it's, as we know, in the rentals between GST or the provincial and the federal GST got dropped, and we saw an uptick in rentals. Now, I think the biggest thing, my comment is coming out of this campaign, and we heard this morning from Mayor Sutcliffe that there's 53,000 houses that are ready to go in the pipeline. We've got 30 more planners. But when I talk to the developers, they're all saying there's still considerable frustration. We might build 4,000 houses this year. And if we looked at that 150,000 houses, we should be building 18,000 houses a year right now to catch up to, which is not going to happen because there's not enough labor and there's not enough material. But if we can get back to doing 11,000 houses a year, which we did during COVID, that's a significant better number than the 3,000 to 4,000 we're doing now. So my comment is everyone here should hold accountable the politicians with all of these programs. I mean, you hear tariffs are the big thing, but housing is number 2 on the list, and we all know that. We're all in the housing industry. We all know that we're not that busy. We need to hold politicians accountable for these promises, and the City of Ottawa accountable to the promises. And we don't need something happening next year. We need something to start now. So my comment, and again, is everyone here, lobby your politicians and make sure they hear that the housing industry is slow and we need to get going. Because we can do 11,000 houses a year if we want to.
Can I ask you one question on that? Because it is something, and I fully applaud what you're saying, but it is also something that I always get challenged with the political view that if you start building a lot more, houses are going to get a lot cheaper. Do you believe that's the case?
No. However, the biggest part of housing right now is fees. And if you look at, when I go back to my parents, there was no such thing as development charges. And now the city says, well, we have to have development charges because we can't put it onto the tax roll, the people building a house. Even though as soon as you build that house, you have people paying in the tax roll, which they seem to forget. However, I think the biggest thing right now is if we can get them to make this promise to cut development fees in half, take out the GST, PST, whatever they call it now. I'm an old guy here. I forget the disk drive doesn't go as fast as it used to. Whatever they call it now, I think it's GST. We need to drop that. And if we can take a house that's supposedly about $750 now and bring it down to $625, there's some incentive. And of course, we all know when I say idiot down south, we know what I'm talking about. But as soon as that idiot starts getting rid of these tariffs and things start to drop to normal, and we start seeing the bank rate, which was supposed to drop this last month, but didn't. But if the bank rate starts coming down another quarter, half point, and the feds and the province and the municipal come good on their promises, housing will come back.
I'm glad we solved that problem. We'll add him to the panel next year. Thank you so much, Jonathan and Andrew, for this conversation.
Absolutely. A little bit of ad lib there. We like that. Jennifer, Jonathan, Andrew, thank you so much for your contribution.
In that project, there will be a small hotel, or a boutique hotel, as I like to say, 150 rooms. 22 of those will be suites, and 19 will be accessible rooms. At the new build, there will be 10 restaurants and bars. There will be 4 stages. So Aaron talked about the notion of it being really important for a small venue, and albeit we won't be considered a small venue, we will have this small town, small venue feel in certain pockets of the venue. So we'll have a small acoustic stage at our Council Oak Steakhouse. Then we'll have the existing entertainment facility that we call the Joint. It's there now. It will house about 300 people. And then we have the Hard Rock Cafe, which is on the center of the gaming floor. You can play to all of the casino guests, and will be in the Hard Rock Cafe, which we consider sort of the heart of the facility. And then, of course, our live theater, which will seat 1,800 or standing room for 2,200.
One of the things is that there are pivotal moments that have happened in the history of Blues Fest, but also in the city, that have affected many of the events that are currently happening. And what I'd like to say is that we often look at Blues Fest or other events in terms of what they're doing for us now. How big is the economic impact of our event for the 10 days in July? But really, what's a bigger question is, what is the impact in the longer term?
Our large projects, like Aaron mentioned, is History Ottawa, which is opening just up the road from here in 2026. That will be a state-of-the-art concert hall that has never really existed in this market. 2,000 plus people, 150 nights. Hopefully, we're looking to program 150 nights a year, which will revitalize, bring more people downtown, fill hotel rooms for people coming in from out of town to catch shows, bring people from the suburbs downtown. They go out, they have dinner, they go out for drinks after, etc.
You've stressed that it's the first position in Canada like this. But it's not the first in the world, but Ottawa is leading this. And, part of the reason why I came here is because we have a municipal council that voted unanimously on an action plan 2 years ago to create this position. And, this didn't happen in Vancouver, it didn't happen in Toronto, it did not happen in Montreal, it happened here in Ottawa. So I think it just shows the level of commitment of our politicians to develop nightlife and develop vibrancy. And I'll be the voice of the smaller venues here if someone couldn't make it, but because this has been all my life. And when we think about nightlife, we think about all these little bars and restaurants. And I'll also speak to broaden the scope from music. Music is the cultural powerhouse after dark, but there's a lot of different art forms that make this the fabric of nightlife. And also there's all the restaurants, all the taxis, and it's an ecosystem. And the action plan we have and the way that it's been positioned inside city administration in Ottawa really translates a holistic vision of nightlife. So it's not just culture, it's not just economic development, it's all the different 9 departments inside the city administration. And I'm there to foster a conversation.